Have you ever wanted to buy a second monitor for your MacBook, or maybe a main monitor for your Mac Mini? If you have, you may have come across people talking about how 27-inch or 32-inch 4K monitors are bad on macOS, and how you should get a 5K monitor or 1440p one instead. But are they actually so bad? This is actually a surprisingly complex issue, so I'm going to start all the way at the start. Back in 2012, Apple introduced their first Retina screen on a Mac. Previously, the 15-inch MacBook Pro had a resolution of 1440 by 900, but on their new model, they doubled this on both axes all the way to 2880 by 1800. Similarly, they did this on their 13-inch MacBook Pro, doubling it from 1280 by 800 to 2560 by 1600, and on their 27-inch iMac, doubling it from 2560 by 1440 to a whopping 5120 by 2880, the first ever 5K screen. But Macs were built at the time to be resolution dependent. That meant that the size of any part of the OS, from the mouse to the desktop icons to text, were the exact same amount of pixels on any monitor you used. But that presented an issue on these new Macs because everything would look like this. This would be extremely inconvenient. So they introduced a 200% scaling option called high DPI or Retina or various other names. Every icon would use double the amount of pixels to render on the screen, making every icon twice the resolution and twice the detail. It would look like the same size as before, but everything would be sharper, more crisp, more legible. This worked wonderfully on any screen with a pixel density of about 220 pixels per inch, but it presented a problem on screens without that coveted pixel density, like, for example, a 27-inch 4K screen. That has about 165 pixels per inch. Still much higher than the 110 ppi of a 1440p screen, but not enough for the 220 ppi of a 5K screen, all at 27 inches. That means that at 100% scaling, things look too small, and at a 200% scaling, things may look too large, depending on personal preference. But to those who want a UI size of a 1440p screen or a 5K screen, Apple has you covered, as in the display section of system settings, they offer what's called looks like 1440p. When you select this option, the UI will render at 5120 by 2880 at 200% scaling, just like a 5K monitor. But then, in order to fit the screen, it'll downscale the UI to 4K. This is the exact same concept as DLSR on NVIDIA graphics cards, if you are familiar with that technology. Similarly to DLSR, it means that internally the monitor is running at that higher resolution of 5K. If your Mac is close to struggling at a resolution of 4K, it will probably noticeably struggle when scaled to 5K. Luckily, on most modern Macs, this isn't really an issue. What might be an issue is the whole downscaling part. No downscaling method is perfect, and there will be some artifacting, noticeably around text. Also, the downscaling does cost a bit of performance, but unless you're doing super graphically demanding tasks, it won't be noticeable over just using a 5K monitor itself. Keep in mind that if you're doing something graphically demanding and need all the performance you can get, you can just switch it to looks like 1080p or looks like 4K, whichever one you prefer. Or better yet, you can switch it to low resolution 1080p or disconnect the monitor if you're using a MacBook. All of these will increase the performance. If you currently own a Mac but don't have a 4K monitor, you can simulate the amount of artifacting you'll notice by taking your Mac's horizontal and vertical resolutions and multiplying both by 2/3. Then you can select the closest scaled option to that in System Settings. If none are available, you can also use Better Display. I'll have a link to a guide for that down below. Luckily for you, I did all the calculations for every Retina Mac, so all you have to do is find your Mac on this list. Please pause it if you want to read it fully. I also have a link to that in the description. While you're simulating this, keep in mind that your face's distance from your screen will determine the amount of artifacting you notice unless you have perfect vision. And it may be different on your specific setup. I tried to get it as close as possible, but on some setups it's not exactly the same. So, this isn't exactly ideal, but what are your other options? Well, you could buy a studio display. Please do not buy a studio display. It costs $1,600. For half that price, you can get a 5K monitor from ASUS, and that is far more reasonable. But you can easily get a 4K monitor with similar specs for about $200. For quadruple the price of that at $800, you get about 1.778 times the pixel count, but the real benefit is that macOS no longer has to downscale the resolution to make it look like 1440p. It can just run at the 200% option Apple added for Retina displays. To compare how scaled 4K versus 5K would look, change from whatever scaling I showed before for your monitor to the 200% option, moving your head closer to or away from your screen until icons look like they're about the same size. Here's a demonstration, but keep in mind that this is what you'd notice if you had absolutely perfect vision or if you're pixel peeping. In my experience, the added artifacts just about go away when I'm just casually using my 4K monitor. To be clear, 5K does look better, but whether it's $600 to $1,400 better is up to you. Finally, there's a much more reasonable option of getting a 1440p monitor. This is the option that Steve Jobs decided to go with back in the day, as he put this in his dear 27-inch iMac back in 2009. It's genuinely hard to find a 1440p 60Hz monitor these days, but a 1440p high refresh rate monitor will run you about $150. A comparable 4K high refresh rate monitor will run you about $300. This is a really great option if you don't care about seeing individual pixels all that much. To find out if you do, switch between that scaling I recommended before to whatever the native resolution of your screen is. Again, looking further or closer until they're about the same size. To find this on your Retina MacBook or iMac screen, right-click the resolution menu, select Show List, and then toggle Show All Resolutions. It'll be whatever the resolution all the way at the top it is. Here's a demonstration, again, keeping in mind that this is what it looks like if you have perfect vision or if you're pixel peeping. In my opinion, 4K looks quite a bit better despite the artifacting, and the price jump between 1440p and 4K is far less than it is between 4K and 5K. Now, in terms of pricing, this can absolutely all change. Who knows, maybe 5K monitors will absolutely drop in price and become essentially no-brainers. But right now, I think 4K monitors offer a sweet spot between price and resolution on macOS. In my opinion, the artifacts aren't a good enough reason to justify spending so much more money on a 5K monitor, especially when the same money can buy you a 27-inch 4K OLED 240 Hz monitor. Or you can use the money you saved to put money towards a better computer, or to get a second monitor, more storage, a nice keyboard and mouse, or just put towards something else in your life. In conclusion, so I don't know if you can tell, but this is the first video I've made. or at least more than like school projects and stuff like that, right? It's made using iMovie. I'm using my phone camera to film everything and take pictures and whatnot. But either way, I hope you found this like informative. I hope it helped you make a sensible purchase. Um, I just found the discussion surrounding 4K monitors to be very negative. Like, there's a stigma online against 4K monitors on macOS, not because they're too overpriced, but because they're too low quality. That just seems a little backwards to me because it's 4K. It's more pixels than most monitors on planet Earth, honestly. And I know I've been negative towards the Studio Display. It's not because I think it's a bad monitor, I just think it's a bad price. If it was closer to the $800 of that Asus display, I think it would be a lot better. So yeah, thank you for watching.